Hello, I'm Harry Stachini and you are listening to the Staff Room Podcast, the show where each week I share anonymous stories from teachers who are overworked, underpaid and close to a mental breakdown. So think of it as teacher therapy, as they remind us of all the troublemakers, class clowns and the flat-out criminals we all remember from school. So join me and my guests and hear what your teachers really have to say. And we're off. This is it, the first episode of the Staff Room Podcast. I'm absolutely buzzing to finally have something to share with you, because months I've spent putting this together, and I've had help from various different people, and I've had loads of submissions coming from teachers, which I am over the moon about. It's nice to know that teachers are actually quite excited to share some of the shit they've got to deal with, because having worked within schools myself for a while, I just realised, I was like, I tell you what, people need to hear about this. So maybe there's a bit of room for me to do a podcast about it. And what's been even better is the fact that teachers are like, yeah, I tell you what, what's the email? Because I've got plenty I can share. I need to get off my chest. So I'm dead excited to, as I say, finally have something to share with you. If you are a teacher and you haven't got involved yet, drop me an email at staffroompod@gmail.com and I'll turn it into an episode. Today's episode is from a teacher who's had to deal with quite an uncomfortable situation within a sex ed lesson, which I imagine is quite a common experience for teachers each year. But I've heard some sex ed stories from mates and, from the time I've been in school, but the episode that I've got for you today, because the story that got sent to me, I've not heard anything like this. And I mean, credit to the student on this one, as well as the teacher, but I mean, the balls, pardon the pun, on this student for him to have the confidence to confront his teacher about something. I mean, kudos to him, but we'll get into that very, very shortly. But before we do, I just want to say, since I released the trailer for the podcast, which actually has a little bit of this episode in it, I had a few people get in touch with me and say that they were a little bit shocked and surprised to hear what some of the teachers were saying. Mainly my mum, right? I think she was like, you're doing a podcast about teachers and you've said ejaculate. I don't know what to do. But the point is, this podcast is about showing a human side to education. So if you have tuned in thinking this is going to be like some sort of parents' evening, I would say stop right now, because I can promise you it's not going to be that, right? Like, the teachers that send stuff in, they aren't going to be saying using that coded language of, we think your kid could improve in this area. If they think you're a knobhead, they're probably going to say it. And you know what I mean? I'm not taking it too seriously. All the teachers that sent stuff in, they're not taking it too seriously. And I think we all preferred teachers at school anyway who weren't complete robots. So just bear that in mind with this episode and every single one to come, because it's a very human and honest podcast. And thanks to the teachers that have sent stuff in, they are making it what I want it to be. So now that is out of the way, my guest for today is Jack Gleadow, who is a good mate of mine and someone I've known within comedy for like a fair few years now. But I really got to know Jack when we were both at Edinburgh in 2019 doing our debut shows. And we had ups, we had downs, we had loads of pints, and we just became good pals. But Jack is someone who I've known within comedy for a fair bit, because I remember the first gig we did together was in a pub. It was either in Warrington or Wigan or something like that. But regardless, we were performing in front of a dartboard, which, screams open mic comedy when you're first starting. But since then, Jack has gone on to become like a multi-award-winning comedian, which I tend to forget at times. Not because he's not funny, he just doesn't go on about it, which, because he's not a knobhead. But he's a multi-award-winning comedian. He's even won the Leicester Mercury Comedian of the Year award, which is quite a prestigious award. It's been won by people like Johnny Vegas, Jason Manford, Sean Walsh, Josh Whitcomb, and like Ramesh Ranganathan. So he's a very funny guy and a good mate of mine, and we had loads of fun pulling apart this. So without further ado, I suppose let's just get cracking and get into the episode. So this is me, Jack Gleadow, and possibly one of the most uncomfortable sex education lessons you've ever heard. So enjoy. What were your school days like?
very different to, I was going to say very different to adult life, but that is kind of the definition of a childhood, isn't it? So primary school, I remember being like fine. I remember year
But you said
6.
5 then, I was like, you probably were.
I remember I went out with a girl called, whose second name was Christmas. That was like...
Christmas?
This is the stage where going out with someone is, go out with me, yeah, I'll go out, yeah, cool. And then you never speak to them again. So that kind of...
That's a lot of people's marriages.
And then, yeah. And I was hopeless romantic, though. I remember in year 6, I went in with a rose on Valentine's Day, and I came back with that rose on Valentine's Day. I tried to give it to every girl in my class, and none of them accepted it off me. I think mainly because I'd literally go, will you take the rose? And they go, no, Jack. And then I'd be like, will you take the rose? I just tried everyone.
That's like, do you know when you see them women that bother you at a table on holiday where they go around trying to sell roses?
Yeah.
You just couldn't
Flower
get
for the
rid of it.
lady? Like, yeah. It was exactly
Christmas.
what it was. And then I did another thing. Like, I had a friend at school, and we started a thing where the day before Valentine's Day, we'd just call it like best mates day or mates day, and I'd just give her a card every year as like a friendship thing. So that became the thing I did instead. But then you'd think, right, when you get to year 7, you're at high school now, Jack. None of this, like, bringing a rose in on Valentine's Day stuff. No, I won't do that. What I'll do is I'll just write love letters to the girls that I fancy. And that's what I did. I wrote, I think, probably 3 girls that I wrote love letters to over the first 2 years of, like, school. I distinctly remember the first one was to a girl named Jess, and I wrote this like full page long like letter,
Like an A4.
which yeah, and like it rhymed. It was a rhyming like letter, and it rhymed with all I want for Christmas is Jess and a Nintendo DS, and I think that is one of the first like proper punchlines and poems I ever probably wrote. And I got the DS, I'm happily to announce. Did not get Jess. What I did get was beaten up by a boyfriend. So, like,
Really?
Well, when I say beaten up, this is year 7, so this is a punch in the corridor, which for me is getting beaten up.
Yeah. But was she with this fella at the time you wrote the letter?
Yeah, but I didn't know this. Like, if I knew she, like, I don't think I knew. Because if I knew and then gone, you know what's going to get her? This love letter that some weirdo's written in his bedroom.
I'll tell you what, a bit of rhyming in this and she's mine.
Yeah, if I put this Nintendo DS gag in, she is going to be pulling those pants down.
Which is actually, funny enough, the story that I got sent by a teacher for this is relating to sexual education. So
Cool.
I don't know if there's any standouts from your school experience, but this was the first time I have ever heard anything like this.
Trench coat, that's the standout for my sex education at school. I know, trench coat, when you hear trench coat, you traditionally think someone coming up to you in the middle of a field, like pulling it up and naked.
Flash by Mr. Moore.
This is what the teacher used. She used like a trench coat to explain what an erection was, and she'd put the trench coat on and like pull her arm out of the trench coat to show what an erection was. And I'm like, looking back, it wasn't really that clearly what she was like explaining, or the way she was explaining it, and like, oh, it's so bizarre. Like,
yeah, well, that's how old's a trench coat? Like, had it been there a while?
I know, yeah, like I do remember it being like an old, like crusty trench coat that's probably this coat's been teaching kids about knobs for 50 years.
See, that's I've never seen a trench coat come out in a sex ed lesson, but at the same time, you know, this, as I say, this story I got sent was a first. I've not seen anything like this. So let's get cracking, right? Hello, the staff room. I have a year 7 class which is known as a nurture group. This essentially means that 100 years ago these kids would have been labelled as daft and made to hang around with sheep and pigs on a local farm. Now, I feel for this group.
Whoa. Got to pause there. A nurture group.
Yeah.
What's nurture mean?
A nurture group. So they're basically saying that like it's for kids that are low ability and
low educated.
Yeah, and I can relate to this because I was bottom set for everything in school. And in maths there was a set that was below me that had 4 kids in it, and that was like plug socket protectors in the walls type thing. And your teacher wore a high vis. It was low ability. So I get the fact when he says it's basically simplistic lessons for him. So he continues, he says, they're all lovely and well-meaning, but they aren't going to trouble any GCSE examiners. I teach them science, and this event occurred after we just recently covered the topic, sexual reproduction. I was a little nervous about teaching it, just in case I said the wrong thing and got labelled as a pedo. Which makes you think, what on earth were they thinking they were going to say? You know what I mean?
Because that's more on him. For him to go, I'm scared about teaching this in case they think I'm a... No, the only way they would think you was a pedo is if, 1, you exposed yourself, or 2, you're a pedo. So, the fact that you're worried poses more problems, to be honest.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like you said about the trench coat, if a teacher came into a class with a trench coat and said, I'm going to show you an erection, I'd be like, hang on a minute.
Yeah, exactly. You wouldn't expect it to be the arm, would you?
No. Mind you, I remember when we did sex ed, we actually got passed around an artificial ball bag, which was literally just like a testicles, right? And you had to feel the testicles and find nodules on the balls inside, which helped you identify if you had testicular cancer. And I remember this sack getting passed around the room, and it was like a purse, and it's just like a room full of boys, because you're split into boys and girls, aren't you? And they're just all kind of like manipulating each of the testicles, being like, oh yeah.
Well, I'm glad it was like artificial and not just, we paid a bloke to come in for 50 quid for an hour.
Yeah, it is Craig.
But I remember distinctly in sex education, they told us a horror story that 2 people had sex and they thought they were pregnant, but they wasn't, because they were having sex in the belly button.
My mate's a GP, and she actually had someone come in and explain to the fact he wasn't getting his wife pregnant. She said, well, explain to me exactly how you do it. And he pointed at her belly button, which was a bit worrying. And you think, well, no wonder why, because, you know what I mean? I don't know if he was in that the entire time or pulling out and finishing into it. If he was in it the entire time, that is definitely an innie, you know what I mean? Because otherwise that's going to be quite painful. But yeah, hang on, right. So I was worried I said the wrong thing and get labelled as a pedo. I'd started the class off with an easy cotton stick activity, which I imagine was right up their street, when this very sweet lad, who's wide as he is tall, walked quietly up to my desk, looking slightly sheepish. Sir, you know when you ejaculate? Yes, James.
Already, I don't think this kid is not ungifted. The eloquency in which he's gone up to his teacher and gone, sir, do you know when you ejaculate? I'm imagining him with a top hat and tails and the daily newspaper under his arm. What a hero!
It is. I forgot to mention, it is actually an all boys school as well. Yeah. It's amazing how it kind of just pictures in your mind. So he says, yeah, sir, you know when you ejaculate? Yes, James. Well, does it just happen? Well, what do you mean? Does it just happen, or can you make it happen? I feel like this he's at least interested in the subject, you know what I mean? He's asking the right questions, he's using the right terminology.
Is he kind of asking in case it's just magic, it just comes and then, literally, and then, that's it, there you go. You can't just, is he saying, can you decide when, is that his question?
Yeah, that is his question. He's being quite genuine.
It's a valid question.
It is a valid question. So this is where it continues. He says, so what do you mean? Does it just happen, or can you make it happen? Well, James, at your age, it often happens overnight in what we sometimes call a wet dream. But as you get older, now I paused. Now, regardless of what some fundamental religious groups think, introduction into masturbation isn't on the national curriculum, which I think is true, you know what I mean? Because you have got to work that one out for yourself. I don't know about you, I was never sat down and told, there's there's something you can do which can help you out. It was never
You just
never
discovered
covered
it, didn't you?
Well, yeah, a mate
You
of
just
mine.
discovered it when you started humping cushions and was like, "Hey, up, what's this? What?" And there's another way of doing it. And then, there's techniques. Because I think, like, me and you were from an era where the
90s.
We just started to get phones. And I think about 10, 15 years, 15, 20 years ago now, is when you was at that age, it was the first time ever you could Google and ask questions and search for stuff and do it all in your room on your phone without anyone else being able to see it. Not that it was anything bad, but I mean, just that you could go on this journey of self-discovery.
Yeah,
like,
I like
instantly.
how you've turned boys looking for porn into something quite poetic there, like this journey of self-discovery, as I find my dirty niche. But that's the truth. Like, a mate of mine thought wanking was when you just get a hard on. So, like, when he was at school, he was telling me about this, that his friend would say, like, "Oh, you're wanking?" He'd be like, "Yeah, I do it all the time." But he just thought, if you get a hard on, then you're wanking. But obviously, like...
So he's coming out to the next lesson going, "Oh, just had a wanking double maths."
Yeah, exactly. But that's what I mean. It's like, no one ever sits you down. And it'd be a weird conversation to have with your parents because, you're quite literally opening the floodgates there, aren't you?
Yeah. But the word wank, it basically explains the whole... That, doesn't it? Wank. Like, oh, yeah, I know what that is. Like...
Yeah, well, I think masturbation just feels... It's very clinical, innit? You know what I mean? And I know you've got to use it if you're in an educational setting, but...
That was one of the funniest things in school, was when there was a kid who was going out... He wasn't from our school, but he was from a different school, and his surname was Bates. And then we all found it hilarious that he was clearly now called Master Bates. Now, that is like...
that was that we cut by football manager.
Has done that at school, and when you find that out, there's nothing funny. Like, I can write material for the rest of my life. It'll never be as funny as that was to everyone at school.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. It's but these kids are, what's he said, year 7, so what's that, 11 years old. So yeah, he says, he continues. So I thought it's best to explain that as you get older, James, you can start to control it, so it only happens when you want it to. Now, I dread to think the first time this poor lad finishes...
Sorry, that's a lie. That's a lie. You can't control it on a bus sometimes.
Oh, do you know what? That is unbelievably warm and relevant to this story.
Okay, carry on.
Because he says...
Okay, 1 second. Warm and relevant when we're talking about masturbation.
Yeah, hey, it's all on topic. He says, so I thought it's best to explain to him that as you get older, James, you can start to control it, so it only happens when you want it to. Now, I dread to think the first time this poor lad finishes a tad prematurely and his mind travels back to the bastard of the science teacher who fucking lied to him, but it's best not to dwell. He said, this seemed to satisfy his confusion, and with a newfound confidence, he said, "Okay then, sir, I think I ejaculated at a bus stop this morning." So, as soon as you said on a bus, I thought, this is unbelievably relevant. Now, they haven't specified in this story if it's a public or a private bus, you know what I mean, like a school bus.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if it is a public bus, I have the image of a young 11-year-old boy at a bus stop with just like an old lady who's got a few bags of shopping, and just his eyes have just crossed at the moment it's happened. And this old lady's kind of looked across at him, and he is, it's his first time ejaculating, so he doesn't know what to do. But I don't know if it's funnier that he's at a public bus or if he's on a school bus. Would you want to ejaculate and then get on a bus with your mates?
I'm trying to think. I think one of the first times I did was at school, like just in the playground.
What, you just
like? I think
just shot your bolt.
I think a girl kissed. I think a girl kissed me.
And that's Jesus Christ, Jack. That's a low threshold.
I'm not sure. I'm sure something like, that's just the and
so
I thought that
a girl
was love.
Kissed you, and you spat your load.
No, I don't think I did, because that can't have happened, because surely you need I can't. No, but I'm trying to think of the logic of him suddenly it just boom, because it just doesn't just boom.
I know,
Like,
that's
what I've just said is a logical reason. When you kiss someone, they might get a tad excited. But if he's just stood there and gone, here it comes, like that, there must have been something at
like
the
it come out like a fart. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Just really, Not. It would have been weird if it sounded like one.
Extremely weird. Then I would be worried. Like,
yeah, but it's not specified. But however you look at it, it's a sticky situation. That's what I'd say. Right. He says, right, okay. So, what makes you think that? Confusion, panic, safeguarding, don't lose your job, all running through my head. Well, it felt like I was weeing, but I definitely wasn't weeing. Okay, then. Have you been to the toilet since you got to school? No, sir. Okay, then. I suggest you nip to the loo and have a check. If you've ejaculated, then you might see a kind of white sticky substance in a moment that felt completely normal. In the moment, this felt completely normal sentence to say, but typing it out now seems totally bonkers. As I think back to that random Tuesday morning at 9:30 a.m. when I explained what fresh ejaculate looked like to a confused 11-year-old boy. I cannot stress enough that I am actually a teacher and have a DBS check. So, do you know that moment when...
Again, this guy is explaining that way too much. Like, he's covering his... I've been DBS checked. It was at this time. I have an alibi. I was here.
It's just... Do you not think, like, ejaculate is a word that sounds exactly as it is?
It's what people say to me when I'm not on time. Hey, ejaculate.
Oh, fucking hell. Right, so he continues. Off he plodded, and I went back to the class to check on what seemed like now completely irrelevant and boring physics shit. I'm ashamed to say it, but I was excited to find out what was in this little boy's pants. Right, do you know that moment?
Again, direct quote from him after what we're joking. I don't want this man to come and beat me up. When I say beat up, I mean punch me on my arm. Okay, carry on. I don't know.
I just think the moment when he said, where was it, up the top, about how he didn't want to say anything from fear
He said up the top.
From fear of being labelled a pedo, to say the fact that he was looking forward to what was in this little boy's pants.
But now I get what he means. I get that, but because he's invested in the story now. That's what he means. Just to clarify.
Yeah.
I think and I
definitely.
hope that's what he means. He's invested in finding the conclusion to the story. That's what he means. For legal reasons, I believe that's what he means. Anything different that may or may not come out in the future...
When you represent him in court.
Yes.
This is exactly what he meant. It was all a laugh. This is why this podcast is anonymous, you know what I mean? So
I wish I was anonymous now if I give the support of this guy.
Well, mate, you've just openly told everyone you shot your load on a playground after a girl kissed you. So, I think your career's finished.
And that was 2019.
Yeah. Right, okay. He says, I waited with bated breath, which is a fantastic image. And when he returned, I gave him a curious look and simply said, and? He said, well, it might have been sticky. I was expecting a resolution, but what I received was a riddle. To me, something is sticky or it isn't. I have never heard or thought of the possibility of a non-binary sticky grey area. And, you got to think this guy's a science teacher too. So, he knows a lot about the elemental chart, but maybe this kid has just found a new compound. I don't know if that's the right word. I got asked what an atom was in year 9 science revision and nearly had a fucking nosebleed. So, yeah. So he says, I asked some follow-up questions, and now this is my favourite bit, right? I did ask some follow-up questions like, did you rub yourself up against anything beforehand?
Why on earth has this suddenly turned into Mastermind? Like, the rest of the class ain't going on. This kid's come to the front and it's gone dun 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 dun. Did you have a wank in a bush? Like,
next question.
Subject.
Pass.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's asking an 11-year-old boy, did you rub yourself up against anything beforehand?
And you said this was a private boys' school?
Yeah, it's an all-boys school. Not private, just all-boys school. They've
Okay.
they've not. Yeah, it might. I thought it might be private. They've just said all-boys school. To try and get to the bottom of why. So I asked a follow-up question: did you rub yourself up against anything beforehand? To try and get to the bottom of what had happened, but I couldn't crack the case, even with all that DNA evidence. Right, I have no idea what happened that morning to this little boy. Was it his first accidental orgasm that led to a strange and debilitating fetish for public transport, or was it merely a warm, leaky bladder that felt comforting on a cold winter's day?
Warm, leaky bladder and accidental orgasm. What brilliant names for metal bands while we're here.
Yeah, that's... warm, leaky bladder, yeah. They sound like they would have a very good start to the career and then trail off after about 3 years. And you know what I mean? You'd be seeing him doing a Botlins. You're like, isn't that warm, leaky bladder? Yeah. First album was great. Second one was shit. Right, he says, it's a question...
They don't get to perform much anymore now the kids are here.
Yeah. Right, he's gone, it's a question that will no doubt haunt me for the rest of my days, along with the 3 following statements. It happened at a bus stop, it felt like a wee but it wasn't, and it might be sticky. That's my story. They've then added, just at the bottom here, I did follow this up with a proper safeguarding ways in case anyone starts worrying. I emailed his form tutor with the subject line, James has ejaculated at a bus stop, expecting a response, but none was forthcoming. I can only assume that they thought it was spam or the ravings of a clearly delusional pervert who had hacked the school system. That for me was I've never heard anything like that, right? Like ever. I've never been in a lesson where that's happened, and I've never heard a teacher ask another student, "Did you rub yourself up against anything beforehand?"
I don't think that. I think that story must happen on a daily basis, every single year and every single term of a new generation of kids coming in, and it's what that story. That I thought this was going to be kind of like an embarrassing story about the kid. The kid there, absolute charm, nice guy. He's going to go on and have a good career, but that teacher, he didn't know what to say, and
hang on. Yeah, but what would you say in that situation?
I wouldn't say anything.
So, right, if a kid come up to you, and what was the first thing he said? So, you're sat at your desk doing your work, and I come across to you, and I say, sir, you know when you ejaculate, you just ignore me?
No, I'd go, I'm a stand-up comedian from Hull, what are you coming up to me in this cafe for? That's what I'd say.
But no, tell me what you do. If an 11-year-old boy said, Mr. Gleadow, you know when you ejaculate... You went, hey, how do you know about that? What would you say? Because if a kid said that to me, I'd be curious. I'd be like, all right, well, yeah.
So what's the question again?
Sir, you know when you ejaculate, what would you do in that situation? So, like, I think this teacher's kind of dealt with it pretty well.
What do you do? So the question is, what do you do when you ejaculate?
No, what did he say? He said, sir, you know when you ejaculate. So, like, sir, you know when you ejaculate.
Yeah, you right, okay, let's do it. Let's do the scenario now.
Right, okay.
I'm the teacher, you're the boy. Right, okay.
Okay. So, sir, you know when you ejaculate.
Yes, Harry? Forgot your name then. The pressure of being a teacher, 3 years at university doing a teaching degree just stressed me out then. Sorry. Right, start again. Right.
So, sir, you know when you ejaculate?
Yes, Harry, I do, yes.
Right, well, does it just happen?
Well, it depends, Harry. Like, it might be because you're aroused by something, because you like something, or sometimes, like something at your age, it can happen during the night.
Right, okay. But can you, control it?
Yes, sometimes you can control it, sometimes you can't control it.
Right, Okay, because I think I come at a bus stop this morning.
Okay, Harry. That's just one of those times when you probably can't control it.
Do you know what would be more worrying is if he went, I think I've just come right now.
yeah, exactly. Then, but if he's at a bus stop, I think if I was drinking tea at the time, I'd probably spit the tea out, like, and then he'd probably go, "Yeah, it was like that." Like,
weren't as warm.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean. It's like I think it's one of them where...
Yeah, he has handled it well, but he handled it well up to the point where he went, go check in the toilet. Like, I don't think that probably needed to happen. Maybe, like, is that putting too much pressure on the kid then to be more confused about what's happened? Or I think to just go, right, that's fair enough, nice one, enjoy your day. But the thing is,
what do you mean?
It's difficult time, isn't it? And I don't envy him. What a job he had. Like, fair play to you, my friend. That job of teaching kids about that subject must pose so many challenges and be difficult. But he did handle it well tonight.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like if a kid said that to me, right? I think I come at a bus stop this morning. You'd want to quiz like, well, you know, do you feel different, like in your pants and stuff like that?
Yeah.
And bear in mind, this conversation's happening at the front of the class. You know what I mean? Like this kids, the rest of the nurture group are, you know, I don't know, doing whatever.
But what? Like, what? What if that kid at that point had just stopped? Because kids, like, flip from different conversation to different conversation. What if he's ended that sex chat, he's asked about it, then he's got another question, or he's just telling the teacher, I come on the bus this morning. He might have just been telling him that's how he got to school that morning. I come on the bus this morning. And then all of a sudden, this teacher's asking him all these weird and strange questions.
Yeah, that's a way to look at it. But it's the fact he said he did it at a bus stop, which makes me think like.
And when he said bus stop, does he mean in his pants?
Well, no, he was stood at a bus stop, and that's where he ejaculated.
That's what I mean, but he didn't ejaculate on the bus stop. Like...
No, that would have been, yeah. Imagine that, Jesus.
Freddo's advert that was in. Do you remember? They still haven't bus stops. The advertisement things that are on. On the bus stop,
on the reels that come
just
round.
on the reel thing. Yeah.
Yeah, you had a Freddo in your head.
To be fair, some of them I remember, especially like when we were kids. Some of when they would change pictures, some of them pictures, like especially advertising campaigns, they can be of attractive women and men. Like that is mainly what advertising campaigns are. So as a kid at a bus stop at that age, probably perfectly like a normal situation to be at, surely.
I think it's normal to be at a bus stop at that age, but to be spunky in your pants and not understanding.
Again, another great metal band.
But yeah, I just think there's a lot of mystery to it, and maybe that's the magic of the story. You know what I mean? Like we don't know as much as this kid doesn't know what's happened in his pants. You know, nor will anyone else, apart from some very confused people who were stood at the bus stop with him.
Yeah.
I'm finishing these off with basically teacher or the student.
What a brilliant way to phrase that, Harry.
Yeah, I'm finishing this off. I'm finishing these off with teacher or the student, right? So I'm going to ask yourself to pick a side, essentially. Who do you think to come out best on this? Who do you like? Now we've weighed up all the options, talked about all the facts and stuff. I've definitely got my side, but takes no pressure. But for me, I think the teacher. I think they've handled that like an absolute pro.
I think the teacher has handled it perfectly, but I think that I quite literally I like the balls on that kid because the confidence he had to ask that question, which is that's a question I know when you're a kid at that age. Is a question you're like, you're confused.
Yeah.
So I think it's brilliant that he has the confidence to go speak to the teacher and ask stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
if he
the other thing is he might have been fucking with that teacher. I mean like mentally.
Yeah.
Before we get any more live and let's get played. Like he might have gone, I'm gonna do a trick and see how he plays this game. So, yeah, I think the kid has pulled a fast one on the teacher.
Mate, I tell you what, they're coming out of you.
You didn't have to make the actual sound as well.
But that's what I mean. I just think that'd be a difficult conversation to have with your kid, you know what I mean? And that kid's 11 years old, so it's sweet.
I wouldn't even ask my dad that now, and I'm 26 and he's 60. Like, I can't even imagine going and saying, Dad, do you know when you ejaculate at the bus stop?
Yeah. And he'd be like, yeah, I do it all the time.
Yeah.
So I met your mum.
Ever since when they had them Linda Lusardi billboards? Like,
get on the back of the... That's why the seats are so sicky, lad. All right, sit down. But yeah, I just think teachers handled that like an absolute pro. So, whose side are you on?
I'll go on the... Well, no, I don't think there's a side here, is there? Because there's no one's done anything bad.
Well, it's not a case of... I like this as a little element to the show of, as I go on with the episodes, we'll just see how it balances out. Because a lot of the stories that are coming in, or well, all the stories that are coming in from teachers. So, you know what I mean? We're looking at the facts of it all, having a bit of a laugh about it. But I think, this kid has been quite confident to go up there and ask, sir, when you ejaculate. Because if he was 16, it'd be a bit predatory,
Yeah.
But the fact, he's a young man and he's asking a very earnest question in quite an innocent manner. And I think the teacher has handled that pretty well. But, there is still that big question mark of what the fuck happened at that bus stop.
What a beautiful... but I like that mystery, what happened at that bus stop. Like, leave it at that. I think, there we go. Yeah. Like, bus stop 429. Like...
Yeah. I've just got a picture of like a bus shelter with shattered glass and just a big spunk bullet in the middle.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you very much, mate, for coming on the podcast. Much appreciated.
Well, I haven't, and thank you. A few people have joined this episode, but I haven't. It's been a joy, Harry. Thanks for having me. I'll be honest, not when you asked me to come do a podcast talking about school days and that. I thought it'd be a nice trip down memory lane for me. I didn't think it'd be a story about a teacher who kept professing the fact that he wasn't a paedophile and a child that was masturbating. Like that isn't what I thought today was going to be about. But I think we've put the world to rights in this in what is clearly a very important issue. There's all these podcasts out there. There's people with opinions, people trying to change the world, and all we're doing is talking about what happens when you're at school, and I think that's brilliant.
Right, nice. That felt sincere, but at the same time, I was expecting a joke to come in at the end of it. But saying that, I'm not fucking doing it again. All right. But no, nice one, mate. Thank you very much for coming on. And is there anything you want to hype quickly?
Hype? That's the thing now, isn't it? People are well. I can't sell tickets to things because I'm not touring. I'm not. None of us are working, but depending, actually, people might be listening to this in the future. So if you're listening to this in the future, follow me on the internet. Follow me on my name's Jack Gleadow. That's Gleadow as in meadow, not Gleadow as in the teacher from this episode. So you can follow me on all those socials. And sometimes I post stuff, sometimes I don't. And then in the future, maybe we can meet and you can tell me about the time you masturbated at a bus stop.
That's it. First episode done. Loads of fun there with Jack Gleadow. Thank you very much for the teacher that sent that story in, because this is exactly what this podcast is about, the mystery of some lad spunking in his pants and confronting you in the middle of a lesson about it. I mean, that's perfect. Loads of fun. And please subscribe as well, because I've got loads more episodes coming up. It'd be even better if you could leave us a review, because then it means other people can find the podcast. Tell your mates about it as well. And if you know a teacher, get them involved. Get him to get in touch with me. staffroompod@gmail.com. Get him to send me stories and I'll keep bringing you more episodes. I've got loads lined up, but I am always on the lookout for more teachers. Also, as well, if you want to get involved, right, you can let me know wherever you find us, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. But let me know what side you're on, right? The teacher or the student. I'm going to do this for every episode and just kind of see how it tots up over the weeks. But yeah, just having a bit of fun in it. And if you've got any like memorable experiences from school, whether it be nicknames or I don't know, like school trips you went on, rumours, or like run-ins with teachers that you had, let me know, because I'm going to start reading them out on episodes just to add a little bit to it, because I've had a few sent in to me and they've been great. But thanks very much for listening. I'm well happy the fact this is started, and dead excited to see where it goes. So please keep subscribing and listening, because I've got loads of great episodes. Next week on Friday, I've got Pete Selwood and Jack Carroll, two very funny comedians, and again, good mates of mine. It's handy, innit, knowing comedians. But yeah, we're gonna hear about a supply teacher that had an absolute nightmare. So we'll see you next week, 3 p.m. But until then, look after yourselves and take it easy. Staff Room Podcast is produced by Harry Stakini, artwork by Poppy Spinks, and soundtrack by James McGraw.